Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's FDU Alumni Webinar Series, sponsored by the FDU Alumni Association and the Office of Alumni Relations. As always, we hope everyone this evening is doing well, and we thank you for taking your time to join us. I do want to take a quick moment to let everyone know some tips for the best webinar experience. We have muted all participants, but would like to remind everybody to stay on mute throughout the presentation so that we can best hear our presenter. Also, at the end of tonight's webinar, we will have a Q&A session. Some questions have been submitted at registration, so thank you for those of you who submitted questions in advance. But you may also submit questions via the chat feature at any time this evening. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Don't forget, again, the chat feature. If you're unfamiliar, you just scroll your mouse over the bottom. There's a little button down there that says chat or more. Click more and chat. At this time, I'd like to welcome Kenneth Lamb, the Executive Director of Alumni Relations and Development.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Jennifer. And thank you for joining us, everyone, for another great talk from Stephen Carroll. In case you missed it, Stephen did a webinar for us last month, and the topic was using LinkedIn to land your dream job. And if you missed that webinar, you can jump online and catch the replay at support.fdu.edu. Stephen's back with us tonight to talk about accelerating your network, presence, and professional brand through LinkedIn. Stephen started his career in wealth management before pivoting his career to workforce and talent planning. He earned his MBA from FDU in 2019 and is now currently mid-market relationship manager at LinkedIn. At LinkedIn, Stephen is responsible for helping customers and users understand advanced ways to use LinkedIn to build networks and connect opportunities. Stephen, thanks a lot for joining us again and taking the time to be with us. The screen is all yours.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you, Jen. And thank you all for being here and joining me. Thanks for welcoming me as well. I know it's late at night for a lot of you, depending on where you're located. And also Zoom fatigue is a thing. We seem to be disconnecting with everyone, whether it's your loved ones, whether it's a professional capacity, it's all happening between screens. So as much as I miss seeing everyone in person, I appreciate you jumping on and spending some time with me. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you a lot of really cool things that, number one, have been evolving in the LinkedIn ecosystem over the last few months and years, as I've seen people transform their own careers, including my own, using this incredible platform. So with that, tonight we have a lot in store. We have a lot to cover in a short amount of time. We're going to cover an advanced version of going through LinkedIn. And as Ken mentioned just a little while ago, we did a webinar on the basics of LinkedIn, the creating of a profile. And we're not going to cover some of the basics tonight. So if you're looking for how do you create a profile, how do you send messages on a basic level, that we covered in a previous webinar, but please stick around if that is the case. We have a lot to share. But what we're going to run through tonight is taking it to the next level. Now, some of you may be in the middle of your careers. Some of you may be just starting out. Some may be thinking about pivoting. Others might be thinking about networking in your future. Some might be thinking about building a brand or maybe even starting a side hustle. All of those reasons are great reasons to be here to learn some of the things that people don't tell you about the LinkedIn platform. And there's really not any type of formalized training on these things. So it's my privilege to bring some of these ideas and tricks to you today. I shouldn't call them tricks because it's really it's advanced techniques that'll help you get to the next level. So as you have questions, please make sure to put them in the chat. We'll take some of these questions later on. We'll go through about 40 minutes worth of the deep dive, and then we'll pause for about 20 minutes of Q&A. And I encourage you, as we go through this session, if you do have questions, please make sure to ask or at least throw it in the chat, because if you're thinking it, someone else is probably thinking it too. And sometimes I don't get to everything, but if you guys as a group want to take it in one direction, happy to go ahead and pivot as we need. I'm here for you. So with that, before we get started, I want to just give you a quick introduction to myself. So for those who haven't met me, Stephen Carroll, I have been fortunate enough to have a very unique and interesting career but I wasn't always here at LinkedIn. So I started my career, as Ken mentioned, in wealth management. And I was trying to get a job when I first left school, which happened to be in September of 2008, which is the same time where the financial legs fell out of the market. And finding a job was very, very difficult, if not nearly impossible for someone who was just a college grad. So 2008 happens, I land whatever job I possibly can, and it happens to be in finance. It was actually just a customer service job. I was on the phones answering questions and taking calls from 401k plan participants at a local insurance company. And that's what I did. But as much as I didn't love it, I worked my way up. I had to keep adding value, keep working hard, and eventually through small promotions, worked my way up and ended up finding an opportunity at a different organization. I started at one called New York Life, and I ended at an organization called TIAA in the wealth management division. Big picture, I mean, I thought I was doing everything you're supposed to do. I thought I was being successful. I thought I was, climbing the ranks and earning a little bit more and adding to my resume. And I just wasn't exactly where I wanted to be. I knew it wasn't going to be for me long term. And I had to ask myself a question. Do you pivot and do something completely different? Or do you run the risk of staying in the exact same career trajectory and regretting it down the line? And what I've learned is that regret doesn't necessarily have a shelf life. Regret can stay with you for a long time. And it's important to start to address those things where your brain tells you, hey, it's time for something new. So I decided I was going to go back to school. And by the way, this is after about 9 to 10 years of a professional career where I thought like, oh, I'm pigeonholed in this career. So after about 9 or 10 years, I decided to pivot. I went back to school for my MBA, finished, and happened to land an incredible role at the company I work for now, as we mentioned, LinkedIn. The part that I don't always spend a lot of time talking through is how I did that. And it wasn't just simply an application. I would be working during the day, going to school at night. And then as soon as I got done from about 10 until 1 in the morning, I would be jumping on LinkedIn. I would be looking at different jobs. I'd be applying. I would be messaging different people that work for cool companies that I would be interested to work for. And I used the LinkedIn platform to I ended up connecting with about 120 people. Of that, about 20 were willing to connect. About 10 were willing to have a conversation, and 2 were willing to give me a referral. And that got me in the door. So I hope that story shows you a little bit of context that whether you're here to accelerate your career, whether you're here for the next job, changing careers, like we said, start a side hustle, whatever that might be, LinkedIn is an incredible place to find connection and opportunity. So with that, we're going to talk through what it means to accelerate your network, your presence, and your professional brand. We'll start with a little bit about the why. I found some updated statistics about the platform and why it's so important to make sure that you have a presence and what it can do for you. So we'll go through a little bit of that. Then we'll get into the advanced techniques of exactly what that looks like and how to do it. And we're going to cover some of the new advanced features of LinkedIn, whether that's, you might have seen stories, you might think, hey, it looks like Instagram now. There's those stories up top. Everyone seems to be doing that. And I'll show you why it's so important. And then from there, we'll open up for some Q&A. Here's the most important thing to keep in mind. 3 people are hired on LinkedIn every minute. Now, some of you may not be necessarily looking for a job yet, but you may. And if you think about the sheer volume, that's incredible. When you think about how long the candidate journey is from application to hire. So if you think about the volume of people that are applying for jobs and getting hired, LinkedIn is a main contributing source. And we do that through the power of this network. LinkedIn is growing every single day through not just our member count, but in our groups that we create, in the communities that we're fostering, in the skills that we're representing, in the schools that we are representing, and in the jobs, of course, that are served up as for candidates like yourself who may be looking for a job. Our goal as an organization is to have a member profile for every single member of the economic workforce, and that's 3.6 billion people globally. Just to give you some idea of where LinkedIn's going as an organization. Now, this is important because, as we know, there's a lot of different places you can spend your time in terms of social media, and you don't necessarily go to each one for the same thing. For it says Facebook, I think Twitter is outdated, but your Instagrams, your Pinterest, all the different social sites, you go there for different reasons. But we know that LinkedIn is the place where people go to improve their career opportunities, search for new opportunities, and network. And according to Business Insider, we won the most trusted social network site for the 4th year in a row, which is super important. We put a lot of effort into making sure that our candidates have a great experience. I'm sorry, not just our candidates, I should say every single member has a great experience. So if you are looking for a job, here's an important statistic that you should keep in mind when you think about whether or not you should spend time on the platform. 9 out of 10 company recruiters are using LinkedIn to find people like you. So if you're not there, how are they going to find you? I'll take it one step further. So we talked before about my own personal journey and how a referral helped me get in the door. We find that a lot of jobs get filled by employee referrals, about 85% of them, in fact. And that the number one way that companies want to recruit, especially now as due to COVID, a lot of times resources are scarce. So they have to rely on the resources they have. And referral is a number one way that talent firms, or talent partners within companies are going to be hiring. So the next question you should be asking yourself is, how big is my network and who do I know? So with that, we'll quickly pivot to LinkedIn. Now, there's a few ways to use the platform itself for networking, for increasing your own brand presence as an individual and as a professional, and how to create an audience. And you would do it a few different ways. So we'll go through just a few of the ways where I think would be really important. We're going to start with building your own professional network and a little bit of that why. So number one, building your professional network. By the way, as we go through this, we're going to actually pivot to the LinkedIn website. And I encourage you, as we do this, this is one of those safe spaces where you can jump onto your own profile and take a look and do a little bit of comparison. Bear with me 2 seconds while I share my screen. Okay. So what you should be looking at right now is a LinkedIn page. This is actually my LinkedIn site. I'm going to the top of the page here. I'm going to click on My Network. And this is an overview of the people that you are connected with, the groups that you're connected with, the people you follow, maybe even the events you might attend. And it'll give you an idea of how strong your network is. I always try to look at my connections from time to time to remind myself who I know and who I'm connected with, and stay in touch. There's nothing like just a simple outreach where you're not asking for anything that builds a strong relationship. I would also recommend, if you're thinking about building your network, making sure to find who it is you want to connect with. In this digital age, especially now in this virtual environment where a lot of people are spending more time on their mobile and desktop computers because of working from home, people are available more often than not, and they're able to check these things like LinkedIn for messages more often. So if you were thinking, hey, how do I expand my network? How do I expand to people that know who I am? And how do I get myself so if there's an opening at a certain company, they think of me first? First thing I would recommend to do is identify who you may want to connect with. Some ideas could be hiring managers, could be leaders at your own company. It could very well be potential employees at other companies, and you just want to make that connection to get that referral over time. Highly recommend to do that. But as you look at your own network from time to time, find out how many connections you have, and feel free to even use this search feature or search with filters to identify the type of person, the rank of individual, and the company that that person works for, and send a message. reach out. People they really value authentic contact these days more than ever before. I'll show you real quick what some of those filters are and what do they mean. So you can search what company they work for, you can search where they're located, and you can even search first, second, and third degree connections, meaning right now you can search by people you know. But if I wanted to expand my reach and I wanted to find someone like someone like a Bill Gates, I may have to look for my second and third degree connections, meaning that people that are connected with my connections and their connections as well. And that helps me expand the people that I can get in touch with. All right, I'm going to go back to my network because there's one other thing that we don't talk about a lot, and that's groups. Since we're on video, by a show of hands, has anyone that has a LinkedIn profile, have you guys joined groups yet? Anyone? Got a few. Okay, excellent. For those of you who haven't, groups are an incredible way to build new connections. So here's just one group. It's a sales group. They post different funny content. They stay engaged with one another. But there are voices that continue to come up in these groups that keep people engaged. And as long as it's professional content, they actually start building their own audience. That doesn't mean that they're trying to sell me something, but it definitely means that when I think of something I may need from their organization, or if I needed a favor, if they had an opening and I needed to reach out to them, by connecting with those people, number one, I know who they are, what they're all about, what they are trying to sell, but I also know who I might be able to ask a question to. And groups make it easy to find people that are similar to you, that are interested in the same things that you are. One example is my twin brother is a software engineer. And he was looking for different jobs, but he didn't have many connections in the software engineering field. So he came to a group, and all he did was look up. You can go to groups and just search. You can even create a group and just search for software engineer. You'd be surprised by how many different associations and groups have been created. Look at this one, 19,400 members. You may have to be asked to join, or I'm sorry, may have to ask to join, and they might need to approve you. That's just to make sure that we know that everyone who's joining that group is going to be of a relevant background and add value to the organization. We're trying to keep the profile, the website and the experience on this website as professional and as beneficial as possible. But even if you ask to join the group, it's usually very quick, and you're able to join. For in this case, I could join the Software Engineer Association. Here's that request to join, as we mentioned. Okay, so you may be thinking, I get it. We've got connections. I may follow some people. There may be some very important people here, Ariana Huffington, Richard Branson, some cool people. What about when I find something or someone I do want to connect with? How do I make an authentic connection if I don't know that person? Well, that's a great question. For someone you don't know that you may want to know, I always recommend not just connecting with that person, but adding a note. So I'm going to look up Bill Gates here. So he's a third degree connection. He may not know who I am. However, if I can make some sort of commonality or identify who I am and why I'm reaching out, that's going to make it more likely for this person to accept my connection request. Again, some of the people you may reach out to are leaders within your own organization or within another organization. Perhaps it's a professional business contact you might want to be selling into if you're in sales or if you're in business development, you may want to engage with. Or it could be someone from an organization that you partner with, and you want to create some cohesion around how you do things, and you're curious how they do things at their organization. Great way to do it. So you're connecting with someone you don't know. Just by clicking on their profile, you'll see connect. And as you do it, add a note. So I would write, hi, Bill. I heard you love tacos, and so do I. Now, I wouldn't actually say that. I would never actually write that, but you see the point. creating commonality and being authentic goes a long way these days. And in an era where everyone wants to be connected and everyone wants followers, but on a professional networking site like LinkedIn, you don't have that mass followership. The selective followership is what makes the authentic connection so important. Again, highly recommend to, as you're connecting with someone, to leave a note, let them know why you want to connect, and perhaps what value you may be able to offer them. Okay, let's say they connect. Now what? The next step is, if you actually do connect, make sure as you start to message and connect with those individuals, let them know why they're connecting, and make sure you're not asking something of them. I've seen this time and time again, where someone will try to connect or create a connection, and they'll say, hey, I heard you work for LinkedIn. I'd love to work there. What jobs do you have and when can you hire me? I'm being dramatic, but not very helpful. And that's not necessarily great use of someone's time. But showing interest, showing commonality, and an ask, maybe just a quick suggestion of how you might be able to help that person, or maybe a quick takeaway. For example, when I was networking with people at my organization, I messaged, added a quick note saying, hey, I heard the company is a great place to work. I would love to connect. If you're open to sharing one quick thing you love about working with the company, I want to make sure it's everything I heard it was going to be. I made a lot of great connections that way. So a great way to start. Okay. Now let's talk about future opportunities. As a show, or with a show of hands, how many people, even though you may not be looking for work, how many people have actually went through the process of applying to a job and going through the application experience just to keep your skills up to date? Who's done that? Okay. Anyone maybe think that that's not something they feel comfortable with? Okay, cool. Maybe one or two. No worries. I always recommend, as you're starting to look for the next opportunity, maybe looking for that job, maybe looking for that next career, if it's your time for career growth, you're looking for that next opportunity, always look at what jobs are available. Save those searches so those jobs get served up to you via email. And then don't be afraid to actually go through the process. Perhaps there's a job that you may be excited about, but maybe aren't ready for yet, or vice versa. There's a job you might be perfect for, but right now just isn't the time for you to make a job change. But to go through that process, make a connection with that person who's hiring for that role, and go through that exercise of interviewing. I think that's a really important thing to do. By the way, for anyone who doesn't know, just by clicking on jobs on LinkedIn, this is one of my favorite places to be. You can look at your most recent searches, save your searches so that they get, like we mentioned, those jobs get emailed to you. And LinkedIn, if you happen to have a premium account, it will recommend you a job where you'll be a top applicant based on analytics. I think it's really important. So as you go through looking for a job, this you may have seen before, but I think it's important to touch on again. Let's say you're looking for that dream job, and hey, I think this job at Heartland could be a good opportunity. Not only is it good to connect with the person that posted it, who may be a recruiter. By the way, most recruiters I talk to say, people don't really message me proactively that much. I'm surprised with how little that happens. Moving on though, once you find a job that you might like, perhaps that future opportunity, I highly recommend scrolling to the bottom of that job opportunity to find out what mutual connections you may have. So if I wanted to find out, hey, there's one person that went to FDU that now works here, maybe they'd be willing to make that connection. You already have that point of commonality. Reach out to that person, see if they'd be willing to make that connection. These days where jobs are getting a little bit more scarce in the short term, always great to have a referral, as we mentioned before, to help you make those opportunities a little bit easier to reach. Okay. Let's talk about the next step in LinkedIn, which is utilizing some of the new features. So before I move on, I'm curious, by a show of hands, I'm going to try to see if I can see everyone, as many as I can. By show of hands, is there anyone here that may not be looking for a job, but might be looking to LinkedIn as a platform to build an audience, perhaps for whether it's for sales or as a thought leader? Okay, we got a few. Perfect. How many are interested in the advanced ways to build your network for your own personal, like for growing your career, whether it's a promotion or outside at a different organization? Okay, perfect. And then finally, how many of you are just getting started on LinkedIn and maybe some of this you're a little unfamiliar with? Okay, no worries. Excellent. Does anyone not have a LinkedIn profile yet? Safe space. Okay, cool. So we're going to get into the next part of LinkedIn. This is a little bit advanced, so I want you to stick with me if this piece is not something where you think is going to be the most advanced. Or I'm sorry, if you're not thinking you're at the advanced stage just yet, stick with me. We'll pivot real quick because I want everyone to have this before we get too advanced. There is something called opportunity.linkedin.com. Anyone ever hear of that? I personally hadn't until just a few months ago. I didn't realize this was a thing. So opportunity.linkedin.com. This is a site, it's a part of LinkedIn that's dedicated specifically to doing three key things. So it's there to really help you prepare for your next role and get the most out of LinkedIn, but it gives you extra resources to do it. So it helps you, number one, learn new skills and understand what skills are necessary in the workplace. What skills are companies looking for? Where can I level up? Maybe if you're a software engineer, perhaps it's learning maybe it's Ruby on Rails you have to learn and add to your skill sets. If you're in accounting, is there new accounting principles to learn? Where are skills growing? That site's also there to help you with interview prep and help you with advanced interview ideas, suggestions, questions you may be asked that you've never thought to think through, so you're not caught off guard on that important day. And it helps you search and apply to jobs. So let me show you in real time. If we go to opportunity.linkedin.com, and please feel free to share this with your network. I think this is one of my favorite places. Here's where you'd be able to learn about skills that are in demand currently. And it'll help you understand whether it's software developer in sales, IT support, marketing. Understand what skills are crucial. And then make sure to, once you have those skills, if you do already, make sure that they are all over your LinkedIn profile. If you don't have them, once you acquire those skills, then make sure they're all over your LinkedIn profile. Here's searching and applying for jobs. We find that organizations are starting to rethink the way they look at talent. They're trying to reskill their current workforce so they don't have to hire brand new roles, but sometimes they're going to have to search outside. So uncovering brand new career paths that didn't exist before is going to be one way to set yourself apart. It's also going to remind you that there's new things that came out. This is one that came out over the last few months. There are filters you can add to your profile if you are open to work, meaning that, especially for any of those in the gig economy, if you are open to different jobs, open to different work, by adding this open to work banner here on your profile picture, let someone who's recruiting for work know that you're open to it, and it'll make sure that they reach out to you first with that role that might match the same one you'd be open to. Now, last thing is the prepare for interviews. I don't think we take enough time to really get ourselves prepared for an interview. We wait until we're about ready for that new opportunity. We go through the interview process, and then we get nervous right before the day. We try to cram in information, and by the time we're there, we just can't wait for it to be over because we're so nervous. Practicing that interview skill set is crucial. There's LinkedIn learning courses that we offer. Talk about digital body language, which is really important, making sure you have a great presence if you're going to be doing a virtual interview. And all the different tools that we have are going to be right here listed on LinkedIn. So I highly recommend for you to dive in when you do have time so you can go through these at a pace that makes sense for where you're at. But also don't forget to share. There's a lot of people who don't know that these resources exist. So please make sure to share that out with your network. Little early holiday present. Okay. Now we're getting advanced. Let's say, okay, I've built my network connections. I'm at a certain point in my LinkedIn journey. I need to take it to the next level. How do I expand my reach? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you might be looking for a job opportunity. It might not mean that you're trying to sell something. It may not mean that you're trying to get people to engage with you. But it may be important for you to stand out as a thought leader. Even within your own organizations, it's very important for you to establish a presence. And I'll ask this question for you to just critically think about. This is just something to think about. You don't have to actually to listen, but if there's a person who has a presence on a platform like LinkedIn, and let's say it's about, I'll just use the accounting example. If you're an accountant and every other week you're posting best practices about GAAP principles and you're showing examples of how companies can leverage accounting tools to save money, compare that person to a same similar applicant with same years of experience that doesn't have that same presence. Which one would you choose if you were the recruiter or hiring manager for that job? Another interesting thought, which I love bringing this up, I call it my mechanic theory. And it's not actually my theory, it's my dad's. And I talked to my dad about the other day when he was getting his oil changed. And he said, oh, I got to go talk to my car expert. And I knew the mechanic down the street. I was like, wow, that's awesome that he knows so much about cars. I mean, where do you go to learn about cars? And he said, you know what? It doesn't even matter about how much he knows. He knows more than me. And that makes him an expert. So remember that as you're thinking about all the things that you know and what you do for work, you may know something that other people don't. I think we always assume that everyone knows what we know. And it's a big world out there. And that's where LinkedIn Live has now come into place to help you expand that reach, build an authentic audience, and if you're open to video, to talk about subjects that are very important to other professionals. At a show of hands, has anyone seen anyone do a LinkedIn Live? Maybe you got a notification, hey, so-and-so is on LinkedIn Live, anyone? Okay, it's relatively new. And you're going to see once in a while, depending on who you follow. I personally follow a lot of people in sales, in leadership, motivation. So I see that, David Meltzer is someone I follow, and he's got a presence on LinkedIn Live. This is a new theory, or a new feature. So you're going to see this coming up in the future, and you actually have to apply to be part of it. But for someone who's thinking about, I need to grow my sales network, or I want to sell to certain organizations, or I want to talk about, like we said, accounting. If you apply to be part of the live group, every so often you're allowed to post live content for up to a certain amount of time, and it'll engage with people that can interact with you. It's live content. And the point with live is that just like with your Facebooks, your Instagrams, we found that there is value in going live, and that we get 7 times more reactions, meaning the likes, the shares, the engagements, and 24 times more comments. If you're thinking about growing your brand professionally, if you're thinking about, again, sales, we see this all the time, or if you're trying to be a subject matter expert, LinkedIn Live is a great way to do it. Now let's take a step back. What if you say, well, okay, I'm not necessarily like a LinkedIn influencer. I'm a professional. I just want to get out there. But there are times where I do want to build my network and I want to engage with more people that are part of my network. That's where we created LinkedIn Stories. Just like your Instagrams, as you mentioned, just like your Facebooks, LinkedIn has jumped on that bandwagon as well. And I mean that, I say that jokingly. I actually mean that in a good way, that there is a value in understanding and seeing, just as you see at the top of that LinkedIn mobile screen, who's posting content live, We know it's going to be a quick short form video, and it's going to give us that quick hit of content that maybe we don't have time to scroll through. So as you might start to see your influencers that you follow on LinkedIn sharing short bursts of information that they can share for 24 hours, if you ever wanted to build your presence, highly recommend for anyone, and by the way, this is open to any member of the LinkedIn ecosystem, you can post short form content to help you engage with your audience, build an audience, build meaningful relationships, and then to teach, train, and coach at scale. I have a friend who's a professional career coach. She uses LinkedIn stories all the time to share a quick video with her direct audience. It's going to get them excited about thinking about their next step in their career and possibly hiring her as a career coach. Phenomenal way to start building leads and potential customers if you're looking, or if you're working with that side hustle. It's also a great way to stay connected with all of your members. If let's just say the members of your connection group, if you want to send a quick holiday chat as opposed to sending individualized messages, great way to message at scale. Okay, with that, we're going to begin to wrap up because, as always, these sessions go way too quick. There's so much I can show you. We went through so much in a short period of time. So we're going to pivot over to the Q&A session, but not before just going through some quick reminders. Remember that as you're interacting with the LinkedIn platform, that content matters. Now, that means the content of a post, if you were to ever post content. It also means the quality of the content in the messages you send to build your network. So as you're reaching out to individuals, remember to always give before making an ask. If you connect with someone who could be a mentor, it's important to offer something as opposed to just asking that person for like a digital coffee and taking some of their time. We want to make sure we're giving every time that we have an ask. Remember to share consistently, sharing content, sharing information, and sometimes that means in groups. I love groups. I think that they're very underutilized in certain cases for individuals not as familiar with LinkedIn. So if you're trying to expand or change and pivot into a new career, trying to expand your current career, find people that are doing it and doing it well and join those conversations. Now you can always @mention at the top right, you'll see the @mention feature, which is very underutilized as well. If you find a piece of content that you think makes sense for a connection, great way to rope them in by mentioning them using just that @symbol and searching for their name. Hashtags do the same thing too, but not for individuals, more for overall concepts, whether that's, diversity and inclusion, belonging, things like that are so crucial and top of mind. And the last thing is, don't be afraid. I mean, this says include video or photo. I would say don't be afraid to show yourself in a photo, but don't be afraid to also take video. Keep the content professional, engage with more people, show people that you're a great person. It's very hard for a personality to show in just a profile. I know everyone here is unique and you all have different strengths. Let them show, and LinkedIn is a great place to do it. Okay, with that, we are at the point where now let's pivot over to Q&A. I'm sure we have a lot. Jen, do you want to? I'll turn it back to you. I'll let you moderate some of the questions, and we'll go from there.
Great, thank you, Stephen. And feel free while we're asking and answering the questions to still submit any you may have through chat. We'd be more than happy to try to get to as many as we can. We're going to start with our first question, and this is from an alumna, Carla Tramutala. And she asks, is there any situation, Stephen, where it's not advisable to have a LinkedIn presence?
Great question. So there's not necessarily a situation where it wouldn't be advisable, unless for some reason you didn't want someone to know where you previously worked or what your experience. So I couldn't personally think of one, and I was thinking about that before today's session. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want that? Outside of witness protection, as a joke, obviously, no, there wouldn't necessarily be a reason not to have a LinkedIn profile. But I will say, take a good hard look at LinkedIn your LinkedIn profile content, because there are scenarios where I've seen people who have a profile that where their experience doesn't necessarily line up with, it may not be like directly, so they might have a lot of mixed experience, right? And the job that they're applying for may not be in the same field. So it's common that you could see someone where their experience may have been in, you may have had acting experience and you have marketing experience, but you're trying to get into an accounting role. There may be instances where the content as part of your profile should be refreshed to reflect where you want to go. So if someone's trying to understand who you are, it paints a very clear picture. Great question.
This one kind of goes along with it too, and this is from alumnus Tim Duran, and he wants to know: are there certain jobs or fields that where LinkedIn is not as important?
Excellent question. So I wouldn't say LinkedIn wouldn't be important for certain jobs, but I will say that years ago, LinkedIn used to be known as it's a place where you go and everyone would think of the same thing. It's a professional site. It's that faceless guy in a suit, and it was thought about only to be used for those high professional jobs, meaning those specific like financial services jobs, accounting roles, professionals, not the what we would call our frontline workers. That has since dramatically changed. Now, yes, there are certain categories of roles where LinkedIn may not represent as many jobs as exist out there in the marketplace. So, for example, if you're looking for some certain part-time work, it used to be assumed that LinkedIn wouldn't be the place I would go. We actually have an entire group of people that's dedicated to building out that part of our platform. So even the smaller part-time jobs, seasonal work, we have 2 underwater basket weavers. I'm still not sure what that is, but they're there. So that goes to show you that there are jobs that span the entire gamut. And again, our goal that we mentioned before as an organization is to create opportunity for every member of the economic workforce. And that includes, everything from bartenders, line cooks, from artists, people who do headshots through LinkedIn gigs. If you're thinking about a side hustle, LinkedIn gigs is a great way to put out your professional talents, editing podcasts, digital marketing work, all that kind of freelancing work. It all now happens on the platform and connections are made through LinkedIn. So there still, I'm sure, are certain places and pockets where LinkedIn doesn't have full representation, but we're on it.
Good to know. Thanks for sharing. So I've had a couple of questions on this topic. So I'm gonna kind of switch gears a little bit to LinkedIn stories. So what is the best use of LinkedIn stories? What are some suggestions to garner more experience? And someone also wanted to know where do you access LinkedIn stories? So I don't know if you could share your screen and show that, or
Sure. So LinkedIn Stories is only going to be available on mobile. So if you try to access from the desktop, you won't see it. If you log into the mobile app and you have the most recent and most current version, you're going to actually see it right at the top. And I'll see if I can share this with you real quick live. So right up at the top, you'll see this little bald head. Does that guy look familiar? Just by clicking on that, that's going to let you start. Obviously your phone's going to ask you for access to your camera, and that's how you start to film that story. Now the second part of that, which is how would I utilize it? So personally, I would do it in a few ways, but the answer really is it depends what you want to get out of the platform. So if you want to grow your professional network, for example, what I would do is I would use that to connect with other professionals in the same industry by making sure that I'm posting relevant content about a certain thing. So in my case, it would be sales. So I would talk about maybe an experience I had, something that I went through, something that was helpful, content that people that are like me in a similar field would connect with and say, hey, that's interesting, and continue to follow. Think about it just like when you go on, if you go on any other site and you start to look at, you end up having those people that you go back to and you follow. It's because it's a message you're interested in, it's entertaining, or it's fun. Maybe it's shopping, maybe it's a certain store. On LinkedIn, remember that it's professional. So remember that the content you're going to post should be something that other individuals can engage with and get value out of. So I would use that if you're in accounting, quick tips of the day. I saw someone else post like one mistake I made this week for personal development, little things like that. And you'll start to find people that resonate with you that will end up following and engage with you because of it. Just the same though, you just be careful, because if you post in the wrong message, you may have people that decide not to follow, because if it's not resonating, then they won't end up following that content.
Great, thank you. And thank you for showing us where to find it. Hopefully everyone was able to see it okay, but it's only on your phone, right? And when you open the app on your phone, on the top, you'll see your own picture. You click on it, and that's how you post your story.
You got it. LinkedIn, just go to your LinkedIn app. Yep, you got it.
Well, we have another question. We've got a lot of questions, and there's a lot coming in on chat, so we still have time, so this is great. This question is from Rishi on the chat. And Rishi wants to know, if I am reaching out to someone more senior, what can I provide to them rather than it just be me asking for advice? And we had a similar question also from Adele, basically saying, when you connect to others, you had mentioned make sure you have something to offer. So I think their two questions combined are, what is it that you can offer? What can you provide to them? Like, what are some suggestions?
Sure. So I love this question. I'm glad it's being asked, because as you're building those connections, especially to some individuals that are more senior than you may be, there's always that reluctance to reach out, or to even to have just an ask, because you feel like it's just not going to be, that message may not be responded to. Totally fine. So the first part, what could you provide as like that, to that give before you ask? Great question. For people that are more senior, it doesn't take much. The normal human factor is to want to help people. However, I'll make a quick comment. And here's a quick example. So someone had reached out to me. And I mentioned a little bit before, but someone had reached out to me because they were interested in a potential role, not with my organization, but they wanted help getting a job. But they reached out and they said, "Hey, I know you, this person. Can you help me get this job?" And I said, "Okay, well, let me take a look. I'll get back to you." And then a week later, he was like, "Hey, I didn't hear from you. Can you help me?" It's like, okay, I get it, but there was no give there. It was just specifically an ask. Separately, a different individual had reached out and said, "Hey, Stephen, I saw your LinkedIn profile and I had to reach out. You don't know me yet, but I happen to know that I happen to see that you do, and it could be anything, right? I happen to see that you're connected with X, Y, and Z. And that resonated with me too, because I'm very passionate about this. I know we don't know each other, but if you're open to it, I'd love to chat and see if there's anything I might be able to learn from you. Would you be open to it?" Simple messaging, creating that commonality, and letting the person know you're not asking anything from them, but people love to talk about themselves. Certain people do. Not everyone, but people love to tell you about themselves. They love when they're asked about, "Hey, oh, I saw you did this. You were part of X group. You looked at you have their LinkedIn profile. You can see everything about them that you want." Find that commonality. Ask them if they would be open to just a conversation. There's no commitment there other than maybe a quick chat. And if they say no, respect that, it's okay. But I would say the give there, because you don't necessarily know what they want. Some people say like, "Oh, how about digital coffee?" People used to say all the time, "Oh, let me take you out for coffee." Like, I don't need any more caffeine in my life. I'm okay. But don't be afraid to follow up with, "Hey, would you be open to just a quick chat? I'd love to learn more about your story," and make it about them. It's a great way to start that conversation.
Great, thank you.
And then
Okay.
there was that second piece. I think it says, how do you take it to, so let's say you don't get an informal, right, informational session. How do you take it to the next step? I'll just make the comment, and it may be obvious to some, but just in case, we'll put it out there. If someone, let's say, especially someone senior, decides not to connect or not to engage, I would say it's okay to follow up and just say, "Hey, I'm just reaching out to see me. Perhaps you didn't get this. I know we're all busy. Would you be open to that to connecting?" And if you don't get like a message returned back from that, it's okay to move on to the next. There are plenty of people that would love to help. Don't waste your time on those that aren't.
Great. So, and I am seeing a lot of reoccurring themes. So if you don't hear your name, I think we are addressing a lot of the questions, because some that have been submitted are also coming up on chat. So this is another one that has been asked similarly from a few different people. And it's basically, if you have a hybrid background, maybe you have experience doing many different things, or someone in Ellie in chat just posted, if you're not looking for one certain job. So you either have a hybrid background or you're looking for multiple different things. What is the best way to organize that information on your LinkedIn?
Love it. So first, for those who have maybe a differentiated background, who have multiple different pieces of experience, as we mentioned before, make sure that if you are looking for a specific type of job or role, make sure that the main bulk of your LinkedIn profile is built out, highlighting your experience in the pieces where you have the experience that you do want to continue your career in. And I say that because what you may not know is that recruiters use LinkedIn to find you just as much as you use LinkedIn to find different jobs. And even the jobs that are out on LinkedIn, you'll see that some of them have promoted next to them. Those jobs are finding you based on your skills. So our algorithm is smart enough, and I'm going to share my screen to talk you through this. Our platform's algorithm is smart enough to find you with these jobs based on your skills. Notice this job here, equity sales associate. It's promoted. Same thing here, relationship manager, promoted. Those are promoted because my title is relationship manager and my profile matches some of the skills that are part of this job. So when I say that, again, let's go back to just my LinkedIn profile. I'm going to come down here in my experience and I'm going to highlight all of the different pieces of the skills that I want my new potential employer to know about. And I'll make sure to use those keywords, because remember that LinkedIn's algorithms use keywords to find the candidates that are good fits. So that's how I would do it. I would also make sure that under two fields here, licenses and certifications, make sure that you highlight any specific licenses, certifications, and skill sets that you have right here in this piece, or in this piece of your profile. So that's a huge way to help you level up. So you may have, I think someone mentioned like an admin, IT. If there's a certain certification you have for that, make sure that those are all updated so it's highlighting your skills in that specific field.
Great, thank you. I think we probably have time for one or two more questions. This question comes from our chat. I think, let me just scroll up to make sure I get, this comes from Peter Molligard on the chat. How can you elevate your recommendations on your profile? Because they currently show up on the bottom. Is there a way to do that, or how can you highlight those better?
Unfortunately, right now, recommendations stay at the bottom of the profile, and we do that intentionally. LinkedIn as a platform has to make sure that the flow is uniform so that the individuals that may be looking for you, their eyes are trained to look at the right places. So right now, there isn't a way to change the recommendations from the bottom. However, what I will say is that recruiters are now looking at LinkedIn profiles and resumes from the bottom up. And they're looking at number one, recommendations. Number two, volunteer experience. Because nowadays, when culture is more important than ever, they're going to look for someone that has commonality, that is a real person, that gives back, compared to someone that doesn't give you a huge edge. And it doesn't necessarily mean that will make it, that's not a deciding factor, but it does show character. And that's something that is very hard to show until they actually meet you and understand how great you are. So for those reasons, no, recommendations cannot be moved from the bottom, but I think that's a good reason to use that recommendations. And by the way, in case anyone doesn't know what we mean by recommendations, if you don't have that piece built out of your profile, going back to, here's one profile. I just use this example because I think this profile was really well done. At the bottom, as I scroll, recommendations here, you can either ask for recommendations or recommend someone else that you see. And someone else, one of your connections managers, will leave a recommendation on your page, on your LinkedIn profile, to show how good of a candidate you could be.
So Stephen, when you say recruiters are looking from the bottom up, they're literally going to your profile and going to the bottom and then working their way back up to see that information that's down there.
Correct.
So, and a good tip would be, to make sure you're giving recommendations so that others will also give recommendations for yourself, but also that if you have volunteer experience, you're making sure that you're including that as well, because that's another great tip that recruiters are looking for.
You got it.
Awesome.
Keep in mind, another piece we don't talk about a lot is privacy settings. Note that some people might be uncomfortable with LinkedIn in terms of just having their presence out in the ecosystem in the internet. That's fine. So when you click on your profile, I'm just going to do this live here under settings and privacy. You have the ability to tell LinkedIn how much information you want to share and how much you don't. So just under just your basic settings here on your privacy, you can say who you want LinkedIn to connect you with, and if you want LinkedIn to leave you alone. In terms of, do you want people to be able to connect with you, or like Bill Gates, do you want someone to have to enter in my email address to connect with me because there's so many people that are connecting with me? You can set up two-step verification, so that way you don't have to worry about someone logging into your account and setting up a fake profile. So it'll text you to confirm that's you logging on. You can stop certain people from viewing your stories. You can stop viewing stories altogether if you don't want to see other people's. And you can stop people from getting your information, because any of your information, you may have your email address, your phone number. You can stop people from having access to that, meaning like the recruiters who might be reaching out, sending you messages. You can even turn your profile off completely if you just want to be a silent participant. Plenty of privacy settings. So if you're ever hesitant, you can make the experience what you'd like.
Great, thank you. And I think that's about all we have time for this evening. And I think we got to almost every single question, so that was great. And Stephen, I cannot thank you enough. This session was super enlightening. You had some really great content on how to really maximize LinkedIn for folks to enhance their professional presence. And of course, you're always engaging. So thank you so much for presenting this evening. And of course, thank you. And I see some waves and claps on the screen too. So I know people are agreeing with my sentiments. But thank you all for attending this evening. Please visit support.fdu.edu. That's our website. You can always go there to check out FDU news, alumni stories, upcoming events that we have. It's a great resource for alumni. You can also update your contact information on there so you can stay in touch and stay in tune with everything that's going on. Stephen, you're getting a lot of thank yous coming across the chat. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Stay safe. Enjoy the holiday season that is just about upon us. And we hope to see you again at some of our upcoming webinars. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.